Although they don't play a role in Tears of the Kingdom, there are a few nods to the 4 champions throughout the game. The Zora reference Mipha quite a bit, and they even moved her statue into a new courtyard to memorialize her. Daruk still has his likeliness carved into the mountain above Goron City, overlooking his home as if he were protecting it from the afterlife. Urbosa doesn't seem to have a memorial of any kind that I know of, but she's mentioned by name in Riju's diary, meaning that her memory is still alive within the hearts of the Gerudo, especially the current chief. And then there's Revali. Revali is a bit of a weird case. Despite his name never once being mentioned to my knowledge outside of the Hyrule Compendium, Tears of the Kingdom somehow gave me a reason to talk about him yet again. In my opinion, this game honors the legacy that Revali left behind, while also answering a question that Breath of the Wild left. However, for this video, I thought that I'd try something a little different. Today marks a first for the channel, as I'm going to be joined by the amazing Pixel Fusion Productions. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a bit about yourself?
Thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm happy to do this collaboration with you. Over on my channel, we're talking about Tulin. For those of you unaware, I focus on theories, analysis, and lore explanation, and am focused currently on the connections between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. It's been great working with Linked Wolf here. He's quite an expert on the Rito.
Aw, you're too kind. I'm grateful that you reached out to me of all people to collab on your video. Anyways, now that our lovely guest has been introduced, let's get started, shall we? In order to explain how Tears of the Kingdom honors Revali's legacy, we first need to answer a question. What exactly is Revali's legacy? In Breath of the Wild, it's established by Teba that the Rito are unable to ascend directly upwards. Link, as you know, us Rito use our wings to fly forward. The wind lifts us up into the glorious skies above. However, we cannot ascend on our own. The Rito tribe used to believe this was an irrevocable truth, until Master Revali's feat changed everything. He learned to create his own updraft and crafted a unique skill that allowed him to ascend straight up into the air. As we established in the character analysis video, Revali likely wasn't born with the ability to use Revali's Gale. He had to train himself to harness the power of the wind to create an updraft, allowing him to do something previously thought impossible. This feat, combined with his shattering of previous archery records, allowed Revali to become a hero among the Rito.
That's all good, but the big question is, what does all this have to do with Tears of the Kingdom? If you ask me, it boils down to the ancient sages we see during the Imprisoning War. No doubt, you guys are aware that after each dungeon, there's a conversation with the ancient sage while their stone is being passed down to their successor. I don't think I need to rehash every little thing. We all know the story by now, about how Rauru had to sacrifice himself to stop Ganondorf by putting a seal on him. What's more important is that each of these sages had internal power that was being passed down to their descendants. Those descendants would be seen as the champions in the past of Breath of the Wild, and in turn, the new sages that we know and love today. Just like the ancient sages, the champions from 100 years ago were also the head of their respected races, which may be why they were chosen to become the pilots for the Divine Beast. Here is what Wolf said in his analysis on Revali.
But it doesn't end there. The other champions were also more than likely born with their powers. In the memory Mipha's Touch, Mipha says the following to Link.
You were just a reckless child, always getting yourself hurt at every turn. Every time, I would heal you, just as I'm doing right now.
This means that Mipha more than likely had the ability to heal wounds for most of her life. Daruk, as established, is part of a bloodline of Gorons who can use the ability that he refers to as Daruk's Protection. This means that his ability is passed down to his descendants, as we see with his grandson, Yunobo. And I don't care who you are, but I seriously doubt that there's any way for someone to just train themselves to be able to summon a bolt of lightning to strike down their foes at the simple snap of a finger.
It would seem that the elemental power that modern sages and champions have were passed down due to their ancestry. The ancient sages all say as much when speaking to the new sages. It would seem that the power being passed down fluctuates in just how potent it is. Tulin, for example, seems exceptionally gifted, as to where his father Teba seems to lack any notably advanced wind powers.
However, Revali isn't related to Teba and Tulin, and therefore, he's more than likely not related to the ancient Sage of Wind. It's for this reason that Tears of the Kingdom honors the legacy that Revali left behind. Revali didn't need to be part of the bloodline of a sage in order to become the hero of the Rito. In a way, it's probably for the best that he isn't. In my opinion, the identity that's already been put forth for Revali suits him the best. He was already a Rito who was taught from a young age that ascending directly upwards was impossible, so he learned how to harness the power of the wind and prove his people wrong, while also becoming an ace archer in the process. To suddenly say that Revali is able to create an updraft because he's related to the Sage of Wind kinda defeats the purpose of his whole character. A common Rito who worked his feathers off to get to where he is.
Or maybe you have a bias for this cocky airhead.
Okay, yeah, that too.
The conclusion that powerful elemental abilities comes from the Sage's bloodline has a pretty big problem with it. Simply because, as we see with Revali, he isn't of that bloodline. Or at least he isn't stated to be. Without that power, how is he able to create updrafts? Where exactly does his power come from? Tears of the Kingdom actually does give us an answer to this, but I think that Wolf should be the one to say it since it's his video.
I know that this is going to sound a bit contradictory, but after seeing a certain line of dialogue in Tears of the Kingdom, I can only come to one conclusion. Revali was born with his powers. Kind of. I know, this is a serious retread coming from the guy who repeatedly emphasized that Revali wasn't born with his powers, but this detail actually doesn't change too much. Allow me to explain. If you head across the Tabantha Great Bridge from the Tabantha Bridge stable, chances are you'll come across a Rito warrior named Ornest, who controls a minigame in which Link has to catch balls thrown by a Goron and put them into a moving basket. However, it's not the minigame itself that's important, it's the purpose of the game. The minigame is called Rito Warrior Training, and it's used to help Rito warriors train for combat by, get this, controlling the wind to create gusts of air. Honestly, I completely missed this detail the first time I played the minigame. It wasn't until our friend and fellow Zelda tuber, DrakenWild, sent us a screenshot of one of Ornest's dialogue lines that I put the pieces together.
Right. This information confirms that all Rito have the means of controlling wind, including Revali. It may vary from person to person, but it is there. We see this in the other races as well. The Zora have the means of controlling water, which is something that Sidon talks about in one of his tablets. Yona is a good example of this, as she has no blood relation and yet she can heal. Likewise, the Gerudo are stated to have the power of lightning, and the Gorons are likely to have the power of fire. Not all of them can manifest spectacular abilities, but that power is there on some fundamental level. Coming back around to the Rito, it seems likely that all Rito are able to make small gusts of winds, allowing them to fly. Tulin is naturally gifted and able to do this with ease, while it is likely that other Rito have to engage in rigorous training to achieve anything near what he can do. I do believe that Revali is noteworthy, because of his ability to take what power he was born with, and do what seemed impossible beforehand. It is possible, though, that his ability to create updrafts is a result of an amplifier being given to him, as a result of overcoming the Sheikah trials we see in the Champion's Ballad. It is feasible that he was given raw metal ores for completing his trials, and with the amplified wind power from those enhancements, he then developed his signature technique, Revali's Gale. Either way, it is something he had to train himself to do. We see him working on that in the memory where Zelda recruits him after all. And while I take maybe a little too much joy to see him land on his face, it still means that he had to work hard to increase his power, maybe even to the level of a sage. That in itself is something of note, and so I would say that his legacy remains intact.
While mostly based on speculation, what we're proposing is that while Revali was born with the ability to only slightly control the wind, he found a way to strengthen his connection with the wind. Through years of intense training fueled by his fierce desire to better himself and stand out among his tribe, he learned to create stronger gusts of wind. However, this wasn't enough. Revali wanted to aim higher, literally. So he kept training, trying and failing again and again and again, but his fierce determination kept him going until eventually it paid off. Once his revolutionary new technique was crafted, it needed a name, and what better name than one that paid tribute to his determination? The English translation calls it Revali's Gale, but to the rest of the world, it's known as Revali's Ferocity. Thanks for sticking around until the end of the video. I do want to apologize for how big the gap between videos has been. I've just had a lot going on these past few months. If you follow my posts on the YouTube community tab, then you know exactly what I am talking about. I want to give a huge shout out to Pixel Fusion Productions for being the first guest on my channel. His videos are infinitely better than mine, and he definitely deserves your subscription. Do you have any last words for the audience, Pixel?
Thanks again for having me, Wolf. Come check out the other half of this collaboration on my channel, where we do a character study on Tulin. All the same, be safe, and may the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.
Thank you all once again for watching. I've been Linked Wolf, and I'll be sure to see you guys in the next video. See ya!